review and revision of policies, first reading. We had quite a few that had no revisions, but we will start with policy 6.206, transfers within the system. Mr. Bland, that would be you.
So this policy, there's an addition, and we're removing some language. The language that you see the strike through, we've been doing this for 5 years, and we've never had to resort to the lottery when we sit around in Shark Tank and do projections.
We usually stop at priorities.
Yes, so we've never had to go to the lottery. When
We did once.
we didn't, we thought about it, but we didn't. We just allowed that whole priority level to go in. So if we have a certain amount of seats, we look at the priority levels and we'll stop before there's a need for a lottery. So we've never had to use it. So I thought it might be best if we just strike it and continue with the practice we've always used.
And the other challenge that we've seen too is, I've spoken with all of you, when we're approving transfers, the growth for the district doesn't stop. We see that all year long. So we are never going to try to fill transfers or fill seats within 10 or 15 students because we're going to see that growth every year. So we always stop at the priority levels.
And should there be a need to reinstate this, we can do another policy change?
We
Okay.
can.
Well, yeah, that was my concern also, is that though we haven't ever had to use it,
Then
we
we
may
want-
one day have to use it. And I also wondered, instead of a lottery, why not a first come, first served within the priority levels, if they're time, date stamped?
So we had this conversation when we first started the district, and then you have some parents that may be on a factory line, they can't get to a computer to do open enrollment at a certain time. So the ones that are sitting at home waiting on it.
Right.
It's
so-
not
And we also talked about with Shelby County, we don't want where parents are having to camp out or we don't want to become like a concert race that
Right.
creates this angst for the community.
No, personally, I'd rather do a lottery, because that to me would be the fairest way to do it.
It is.
And we can leave this language in or take it out. I'm kind of impartial. We've never had to do it, so.
And I don't
usually
think
stop
we'll have to
before
do
we
it
get
for
there.
the next few years anyway, but, if
But
you want to
rather
leave it
than-
in, then leave it in.
Yeah,
I
but
would
rather
rather
than
leave it
rather than having to go back and amend the policy when it happens,
Yes.
it's kind of, doesn't hurt anything.
Yeah.
Why don't we just leave it in there? Would that be fine?
I
Are
agree-
y'all in
I agree with
agreement?
that. I think that makes sense.
Comments?
I guess the only question would be, if we left it in there, do we need to define what that lottery format looks like? Or do we just leave it lottery format and,
So it would be my preference that we never have to use a lottery. So we would probably stop it at a priority and not have to get to that level because there's a lot that goes into it. So we did this when we first started because we weren't sure how transfers would be, open enrollment would be, but since we've never had to use it, it would be my preference that we never have. But if you want to define, we can define it. It will be electronic. Each student on the wait list will be assigned a number. Those numbers go into a random number generator.
Could we just add the words electronic numeric lottery?
Well,
Yeah.
I think,
I don't know.
But
if we
I
have
think
to.
that goes back to procedure as
Yes.
opposed to
Yeah.
policy.
Policy.
And
yeah,
go
go
ahead.
ahead.
I'm sorry.
Well, just saying, my question is too, as we're limiting non-residents more and more, I'm just saying, I don't really see a need to, I think it's fine to leave the lottery in case something does happen, but I think if you have a procedure that you know you have, then, but I don't think we're going to need it as we limit, because our goal is to eliminate non-residents.
Okay.
But I
as
think,
we go.
to Ms. Luter's point, I think whatever the process is, it needs to be clearly communicated. That way, nobody thinks somebody's in the background doing something funny, manipulating situations. Because I know that's not happening, you know that's not happening, but the more we are clear about this is the process, and if we get to this point, this is the process, the more comfortable the community is with it. But does that help?
Yes.
Ms. Luder, does that help?
That's another reason why I hope we never have to go to that.
Yeah.
Well, I just, like I said, I still can't, as we continue to eliminate non-residents, as we move, as we've been moving since the beginning to right-size our district, we really should not, except for the high school, and it's an application process
And now
there.
we're to the point where the majority of those transfers are academy students. So we're not getting to the next priority levels.
And I believe whatever procedure that you and Mr. Bland want to put together would be just fine, so. Like
Makes
she
sense.
just said,
That's
it's
more
a matter-
procedure than policy.
Yeah.
It's a matter of procedure, not policy.
As long as we're communicating.
Okay, so we'll unstrike the red.
Okay.
Is that what I'm hearing? Okay.
Well, I'm looking for heads.
Sure.
We're just going to leave the red.
The next section,
Hold on a second. Do you update the amendment? So the recommended resolution tonight, put in the words as amended, because the public has seen this with those changes on.
Yeah.
Make sure whatever we have as the recommended policy on there, just say as amended on the end of it.
Okay.
In the email.
Okay. So are we leaving the
We're
red?
leaving that
Okay, all the red?
on both, yes, on the both.
Not the red on
Not the
number
red.
3, but the red
Not
on the,
within the
Yeah.
system?
Right,
Just the.
Just the one.
Just the
on-
transfers
Interdistrict transfer.
with, yeah.
So even this one we are taking.
Because it's in both policies.
Yes, so we are only the red that's referring to the lottery system.
Page 2, not page 1.
Yeah, page 2.
Because the others are referring to exterior, correct?
Yes.
Page
Okay.
2, it states.
Mr. Bland? No, didn't know if you wanted to.
okay. The next, the yellow that you see, we try to add wording to be as clear and specific about the process. So each year, the same way that we look at the process and determine whether or not we need the lottery, we determine how many seats we can have per grade band. So we'll continue to evaluate that yearly. And if we can't get to a specific grade band, we will not allow transfers for that. And if we are over, if we see that we're over in a grade band, we will have to scale back and possibly rescind some transfers. They're not gonna, I think we wanna combat that exit year and work more year to year. Let's still allow language in here that says you still have the possibility to remain through exit year. But it's all gonna be based on grade bands moving forward.
Okay.
And do you leave, when you set your grade bands, do you leave a couple extra spaces just for students
Growth.
moving in and?
We always leave room for resident students, so we try not to, because we have to hire based on grade band, and if a grade band is really close, we'll go ahead and cut it off and hope and pray, if the kids move in, so we're going to hire a teacher 3 weeks into the school year. But
And that's why we haven't been getting to the lottery system, because we know that we see students coming in throughout the school year, so we have to plan and make space for those students.
So when you're talking about staffing issues, you're talking about where you have to cut off in order to employ
in order
it,
to keep from hiring
keep
additional
hiring an
teachers.
additional teacher.
So when we report our attendance
Right.
from the schools to central office, it's actually an Excel spreadsheet, it's a BEP sheet. So it actually calculates the teacher-student ratio in your grade bands. And so you can actually see the number of students. And so when we're looking at that, if you had a grade band, for example, and it predicts how many students can you still add to this grade band, if you see that one is within 5 students, 6 students, that would be one that we would not be granting transfers to those grade bands, because we know that we're going to see at least that many come in here for the year. And it would require us to hire an additional teacher in the K-3 grade band to lower that teacher-student ratio, because that gets reported to the state on our 20-day reports.
On the June 6th date, I know that's been how it's been. Have you had any pushback on that? Because that does seem late to me. I mean, I know for the most part, in intra-district transfers, we've been allowing through exit year. So there hasn't been a whole lot of rescinding going on. Would that, do you see that as potentially being an issue for parents? Because that is.
I think we
mean,
talked about it.
That date is there specifically for high school because they have to wait on
Okay.
the semester exams to come back
Okay.
to decide whether or not they want to rescind the transfer. So we pushed it back. You know, if school's out May 27th, they get semester exams back, they decide to
Right.
rescind the transfer June 1st, and then we send it out.
But do you let the elementary ones know sooner, don't you? Or do you wait until
We
March?
let everybody know during the open enrollment period. We'll send a continued enrollment letter out, and it says, as long as your grades, attendance, discipline remains satisfactory through the end of the school year, you're good. But
Okay.
it's mainly for the high school. They may, if a kid fails the second semester, they may decide to rescind the transfer. We have to send it out.
Okay, so I'm just going to repeat so I make sure I understand. So they're going to get some type of knowledge of yes or no before this, as long as, with the caveat of behavior and academic standing
Yes.
staying consistent.
Okay, so they won't find out on June 6th, our grade bands say we have to
That's
not.
correct. So usually, is it a month after the window?
That's
It's usually like in
It's
March.
usually in
April.
March.
Okay.
So
All
we
right.
send them out by March 1st, but that's something that we'll look at projections, and
Right.
then we'll decide grade bands then. And if we think at that time we need to cut
Scale
the
back.
transfer,
Okay.
we'll do it at that time.
Yeah.
Okay.
So it won't be, June 6th is the absolutely drop dead.
Drop
That's-
dead.
That
Okay.
has to be for special circumstances, like you
Right.
said, where we have an attendance issue or we have a grade issue.
Okay, okay.
And it is, I think, important to, since we are going to be having students not be able to finish through grade band or through the exit year, there are some students that are going to have to look for another school.
Right.
So the
Yes.
sooner they do.
So the sooner we let them
Sooner
know,
is
the
better.
better.
It's, I hope I'm not speaking too soon, but it's my hope that we can send out letters no later than December. I think at this point, we may have decided that everybody will have to reapply
Yeah.
for a transfer, and then we'll go through the priorities and reevaluate at that time. So I'll send out communication, we'll send letters to all students that are on transfer, we'll do a sky alert. We'll communicate as many ways as we can to let them know to go ahead and reapply, and to possibly be looking for alternate methods of education.
Any other questions?
Is it,
Go ahead.
not to belabor it, does it make sense to move the part about programmatic capacity or staffing issues to the application point? And then say that you're notified by June 6th of continued transfer status based on academics and attendance? Just to help people realize that they don't have to panic if they're gonna get notification on June 6th that
Rebecca, where were you saying?
Where were you saying?
Well, if we move the part about programmatic capacity and staffing issues back in the part about open enrollment, where you could re-enroll, because we're, at that point, we know what our programmatic capacity and staffing issue ability is.
Oh, I see what you're saying, yeah.
But this June 6th date is based on attendance or behavior.
Or academics.
Grades.
I think that would,
Right, because I
Be
feel
more
the way
clear.
this, I see what you're saying, because the June 6th being in that same sentence, it looks as
It looks
though
like
the grade bands
you
could
could
affect it
find
all the way
out,
to June 6th.
oh, we have more kids than we can handle and we're gonna.
Yeah,
figure
do you see,
out.
if we could,
That makes
That would
sense.
be-
that does make sense.
So we're, you just want me
Somewhere
to,
in here, it talks about open enrollment, students re-enrolling who've been on a transfer would be notified at that point of space available.
You're talking about the last bullet.
The last bullet on the first page.
so we just add those to the end of that sentence?
Mhm.
End of that sentence.
Oh,
Yeah. I know I'm being picky, but when you read that sentence, students granted transfers through the open enrollment process have the opportunity to stay at their school until their exit year. Should opportunity be bolded? Because they may just skip over that and read, oh, we can stay through our exit year.
Yeah, That's a good point.
I think that's fine.
I just don't want any confusion, because some people may not really read that all the way through. And maybe if you make opportunity bold, they'll,
Unless you want to change the word
yeah,
to possibility.
possibility. Possibility might be
How about
better,
possibility? I
Yeah.
think that's a better word.
because,
Process
Opportunity.
have the
Opportunity, I
possibility.
think, already can,
yeah,
Right.
I do too.
Yeah.
Possibility, yes.
I would agree.
And that's why I just don't want people to,
Get caught.
yeah.
Good point.
So instead of opportunity, possibility.
I think that.
I
that will
think
make
that's
it a
much
little
better.
clearer, That it's not a done.
Possibility.
It's not a done deal.
And then back,
At the same,
Trying to eliminate your phone calls.
So this whole thing,
In our email.
You know, headaches.
so this is going in that insert until this, so what about this? The whole sentence?
Is there anything else with this policy?
just make this a capital P.
I know, I've talked with Mr. Manuel about this a little bit. I just want to,
Just the other.
the feedback, I know probably all of us have gotten to some extent about
that is
the
a separate-
inter-district transfer policy. I think there's some tension in middle school in particular. Some parents are getting nervous about
Oh,
the
are we moving on to that policy?
I'm still
Oh, are we-
intra-district. We're intra-district right now, aren't we?
No, we were doing this one.
Right, within the system.
Within the
yes.
system,
Yeah.
okay, because this is all,
This is intra.
oh, gotcha.
Yeah,
I just want to clarify what the changes that we made to that policy.
okay.
So on 6.2061, we have added to that last bullet,
We're on 206.
Yeah.
okay, that's what I'm clarifying.
Let us do
On
page 2, line 4.
6.206, at the end of the first page, all applications need to be submitted on or before the designated conclusion of the open enrollment, as evident by a postmark if the application is mailed. We're going to take that sentence about grade bands.
It's in front, it's at the first bullet, the end of the first bullet, where it says online computer support will be also available. We'll put
So
that
what are
there.
you adding to the end of that?
We'll put
However,
the yellow.
grade band, the whole thing.
Okay, so
Line
are you having it
8.
in, are you having it in both places? That clause, or
I
just
think
in
we're
that?
removing it from the bottom. And we may need to take out however and just start with grade bands will be available, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
And just take
So
out
the
however.
only question that I would have is, if we are changing our process, and we're concerned about the word possibility or opportunity, why do we have that bullet or clause at all? So if we have in the,
Just
and I
take
think
it.
that's a good point to move it up to that upper area, if we have there, instead of saying however, we just say grade bands will be evaluated yearly, the program
That-
has your evidence, we have that clause there, then remove that other bullet altogether that references possibility of the
That's-
exit year.
Yeah, I think that's
And that's
good.
for enter and intra.
Yes, just.
Yes,
I think it just take it off.
right.
That
And
way
then,
there'll be
so
no
that
But then
confusion.
your bullet point would just be
parents,
Parents or guardians will be notified by
June
June
6th
6th
each year of their
and June
continued
2nd.
transfer status based on attendance, behavior, and
Yes,
academics.
academics.
academics, yes.
I think that's fair.
It
And
is.
it gets rid of all
Yeah,
ambiguity.
that.
Perfect.
And that, I
better.
think that's what we're trying to go for, is
Are you
getting
going
them.
to make a point here based on attendance?
I think
I
that
think
was
so.
a good addition.
Okay, so,
Parents, so we're adding on
Based
to that
on-
last bullet where it says parents or guardians will be notified by June 6th each year of their continued transfer status.
And then you
Or
want
based
based
on,
on.
based
Based
on,
on?
Attendance discipline, grades attendance discipline.
grades,
I don't think
attendance,
you
and
need a,
discipline.
you don't need a comma or a semicolon, it can just
Just say
continue.
based on.
Based on.
Okay.
Based on.
Yes, that,
Always like-
that's
Sorry.
much stronger.
Behind the comma, please.
No extra commas.
No extra, I think what I was going back to was parents who are currently living in GNSD and going to a different middle school. They look at this and they get nervous. And I know we probably all trying to reassure them, just take.
No, but I think that
Sometimes
makes
commas are
policy
important.
clearer
Yes.
for everyone.
I just, we're trying to do the best thing. So I guess my request is that as you're communicating this, we be as clear as possible about, particularly with the middle school. Right now, as Mr. Manuel and I discussed on the phone, neither one of them are in prime number situations. We have overcrowding in both Riverdale and in Houston Middle, so it's a different situation than our elementary school system, our schools numbers. And so, as much as we can respect the fact that middle school is different and in a different place, and communicate that to them, I think that would help. I mean, we made our zoning decision based on one of our main criteria was the fact that we didn't want small cohorts moving from one group to the other. And I want us to be mindful of that in the next year. We don't want to do that to another small cohort in the fall because of the zoning we've done this year. So that's just my 2 cents.
Nope.
So-
Worth noting,
And it was
thank you.
discussed, the superintendent discussed that with all the PTA presidents and
Yeah.
answered a lot of their questions so they could go back to their schools too.
Yes.
But I,
Same discussion.
And it's that same, I mean, as many ways as we can get the word out through PTO or Mr. Bland's emails and Skyward and all of that, the better.
Because it's been discussed on the phone, the primary purpose for us rezoning at this time is the creation of a new elementary school.
Absolutely.
So we are looking at our elementary grade bands to redistribute the student population. At our middle school level, like you said, there hasn't been a change in our facilities. So all we're talking about
Static.
doing is shuffling between our two facilities.
overcrowded
serving-
places.
Yeah, 2 overcrowded places. So our overriding principle through all of this, just like when we did the zoning principle, was if we didn't have to rezone, we wouldn't. We want families to be able to have that continuity, to be able to stay where they are. And so we want to do that, and take that into consideration.
Yeah. Good.
anything else with this policy? Then we will move on to inter-district open enrollment, 6.062061. Mr. Bland? I'm sorry.
Same, it's 6.2061.
Yeah.
So
Yes.
we'll make the same changes to this one. There is also another additional strike through for the students that are currently enrolled. It says not necessary if the transfer is through exit year. I'm not sure that we need to keep that in there or not. I don't think it serves any purpose.
No, I think it would add to confusion.
So I just recommend we strike through it and move on.
So,
Lottery stays.
yes.
Lottery line stays.
Yes, on the second bullet on page 2.
No, this lottery stays.
Okay.
And we move
Exactly.
So the next-
exactly like the first one.
Yes.
Same thing? Yeah.
You had something.
No, I was just going to clarify that it's the same as the other policy.
Okay. So we'll remove that bullet and move that wording to the first bullet, correct? Got it?
Also at the same thing, like, based on grades, attendance, and discipline, exactly like that.
Any other comments or questions?
On line 21, transfers and priorities 2 to 8 will be granted so as not to exceed the maximum allowable enrollment as set by the board. Has the school board ever done that?
Well, what we really set was that we wanted optimum capacity.
Yes,
Okay.
that was
So-
kind
What
of
we've
the
said
guideline.
since the beginning is.
So it's a guideline, not so much a limit.
That's right. Optimal capacity.
Well, we do have a limit, the state limit.
Right, well,
I mean, I'm just saying.
yes and no.
And
Yeah,
fiscal limits. I
right.
mean, we do, but
I think the challenge that we
Yes.
run into, and this one did make sense, and we had extensive debate on this when we started, the capacities of our schools change. And it's not something necessarily that the board would vote on. I can tell you, for example, what we've talked about with Farmington, for example, and usually it's moving the other way. We have seen increased needs for OT, PT classrooms, more resource classrooms, more speech classrooms, and a certain capacity, and those are determined yearly when we're looking at the IEPs and the needs of the students in those programs. And so that's where we're seeing the shifts. So even our footprints from when we started with our optimal and maximum capacities that we've identified, I would say, aren't increasing. We are decreasing those
Those numbers.
as we're looking at our programmatic needs of our schools.
So do we need to address this policy and make this a change of some sort so that it's clearer that,
There's
mean,
not
it-
a magic number
there's
out
not a
there.
magic number.
Yeah.
I feel
Right.
like there's, what that says, that promises something that doesn't exist.
Right. And the other thing is, and we all talked about this on the phone today, is what does that number, the number would be meaningless, because
Right.
we would set a number, and then, like I said, the students would grow and coming during the year, and we exceed those numbers.
Well, I think it's more based on how many transfers you want to have.
Right,
At what point do you say no more transfers?
that's right.
And not,
That luxury.
and well, and that's that's what this infers, is that we have a point that we say there is a magic number. And there isn't.
Right.
So what do we do? I'm just asking, what do we do with that? Do we want to leave that
Is this
alone and
bullet
table
point
that to
even
another
necessary?
point?
No, it's not, yeah, it's not.
Just strike it.
I just.
I would strike it.
Because
Just strike
we've
it.
already said that we will
Yeah.
review grade games.
Yeah.
So-
Yeah,
Right.
I would
Well,
strike it.
And again, I think it goes back to your footprint analysis, is that, like you're seeing in Farmington, like we're seeing in Dogwood, like we're seeing in actually all of our
Yes.
elementary schools, is the demand for special needs has increased, which takes up more space, which reduces our capacity.
That's what I forgot to do.
So,
Yeah, I'm great with that.
I'm just, again,
I think the reality is what we're also getting to look at tonight, when we were talking about this too. When we look at this master facilities plan and we look at our footprints of our schools, this is something that the board reviews annually.
Right.
And those numbers that we are looking at, what are the capacities needs for our schools, are included in this,
Right.
this document. I think that's really the time when we're sitting and looking at.
right.
I'm good with it.
Okay.
Let's strike that.
Strike it.
Any other concerns, comments with this policy? You good, Ms. Virginia? You with us?
Yes.
Okay, if there are no other concerns, then we'll move on to this second item of the agenda, the approval of the instructional calendar for 2019-2020.
There were two policies that we're actually removing potentially. I
Yes.
think we need to address those as well. If we're
Okay.
going to delete the policies, we need to explain why those are being discarded.
You have them up.
Six-
Was it 6.414?
6.414.
Yeah,
So this recommendation came from Mrs. Law. There are no other.
Who is our licensed
She's
clinical
our,
social worker for the district?
Social worker and counseling coordinator. The two policies that are that were recommended for removal, no other municipality has them, and if they're not TSBA, they're not state policies that we have to have. She recommended that we remove them from our policies, to not have policies that we don't use or
Are they redundant? Are they, I mean,
the first one is guidance in school counseling.
Right.
We have a school counseling program. They have state standards that they abide by. So
Okay.
we really don't have a need for,
Need.
we don't
well,
have a need for either.
I'm just making sure that everybody understands, we're not just saying we're tossing out the guidance
No,
counseling program.
No, they're
It's-
two policies we don't have,
Right.
we don't have
I
a
mean,
need
you
for, and
know,
nobody else has them. So
people
there was
freak
something
out.
that were carried over, so just in cleaning up policies where she recommended removal.
okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Blaine.
Okay.
Okay, instructional calendar 2019-2020. Hello, Dr. Park.
So we have before you a proposed calendar for your review for tonight for 1920. In this calendar, there are a few changes that we've made from what you've normally seen with our previous approved instructional calendars. Just some items to note, we have students starting a week later than what we've previously had in the past. We also have the November PD Day on Election Day. That's something that we started based on the feedback from the last calendar committee. And so we wanted to continue that, but then also legislation was passed this year where we are required to be shut down, have our schools closed to students on Election Day. We know this
Weren't we
upcoming year.
smart?
We are ahead of the game.
We were ahead of the curve.
So we will see that that's on there, but it was also in the 18-19 calendar. But that's also here. Something that we changed based on some feedback from our teachers was that the parent conferences, they were previously on something that we went out with the survey. They were on a Thursday night of that week, and we we know that teachers really prefer to have a day after those conferences, because that's a really long day for teachers without students. So they previously, in some years, have had a PD day after that. So what we decided to do, based on that feedback, was to move the parent conferences to that Monday night. So Monday, and then they would have that Tuesday, election day, as a PD day. And then we have, again, we've built in for the flex days for PD for the week of Thanksgiving, so students would not be here that Monday and Tuesday of Thanksgiving. And then also to have students start back on January 6th. So when you start a week later, then you're trying to pack in everything as much as you can so that you don't end later. And so you'll see that we tried to balance out those 9-week periods, or the first semester, the 2 quarters of the first semester, as best we can, and then we still have a longer time for second semester, the 92 instructional days there. Something that I want to also just bring to light here, when setting the instructional calendar, there are several guidelines that we must abide by. One is what's listed in Tennessee Code annotated 49-6-3004. This is where it details what our school days and school terms should be. Our teachers are on 200-day contracts, and so those days are built in specifically that are listed out in the law. So when looking at creating the calendar, it also is not just created for students, but to go in and count those required PD days and the required admin days. And something that we did try to do is to honor our teachers, and instead of building in an extra admin day, we are looking at having an admin day made up of the Meet the Teacher and Curriculum Night, and that's something we've required them to be at, but we have not counted it as one of their days. So that is something new that we're trying to.
So I would say one of the things that you'll see as a theme that we want to do in this district is we want to honor teachers for their time and effort that they're providing to the schools. And one of the things that we've known, and we saw this in our surveys from the teachers, is this expectation that I come up unpaid during the summer to decorate my room, to work on my classes, to have it set up. That's what we're trying to accomplish through this calendar with this extra time at the beginning, to allow them that time to get paid for those times that they're actually there working. And also you see that the fact that we have times that they have to be up there in the evenings for Meet the Teacher or curriculum nights, we're trying to honor that through this calendar and honor their time and actually record that. I think some of the teacher feedback, they don't necessarily understand all of the policies and procedures. Why can't we work 190 days? Well, because it's required by law that you have a 100-day contract. So we have to either build that in through PD, admin days, or actual instructional days. So
Or coming a week earlier.
if they weren't doing flex
2 weeks
PD
early.
days, then they would actually be teaching the students on those days. So know that those are requirements that they have to be present 200 days working.
So I think that's a great idea. I think teachers will love that. The question I have is if they have a situation where they're not going to be able to be at the curriculum night, or they're not going to be able to be at the Meet the Teacher, will they then have to take a half day?
Yes, they would.
So that would then officially be a half day that they're taking, okay.
They take 10.
If it's going to
Well,
count as one, yes.
If it's going to count, then,
That's right.
because I
Yes.
know we've all been to curriculum nights or whatever, when one teacher couldn't for sickness or whatever.
And that happens.
Yes, and it happens, but that needs to make sure that's clear.
We will.
One quick question. We talked a little about parent-teacher conferences being November 5th, and was that a little later, late in the school year? And I think we had some discussion about that, but maybe we could.
I think for us, we talked about data points when we were meeting with our PTO presidents, really talking about how much information you have to talk about the progress of the student in the class. I feel like it's more time, it gives them more ability to really comment on what the students' needs are and how the parents can support what's happening in the classroom.
That makes perfect sense.
Previously, parent conferences have been in September, and so during the months of August and September, we have so many events at the school that parents are there at night, so if there are some red flags that are happening, certainly teachers have the opportunity at any point to contact parents, but to have them there so much, it's a bit of a juggling act for parents as well, but to have it in November, this gives them a little extra time to get more data points in. They've had time to see the parents, and honestly, you can schedule a conference at any point.
Anytime.
When you see the need, but this gives you a long time.
And there's email. Teachers are available. And you're right, you can schedule a conference at any
So the
time.
majority of our conferences do not happen on these days, and nor could we build in enough time
Yeah.
into a calendar to accommodate all of those. The teachers are able to do that. They do it during their planning times. They meet before and after
The kids wish they only met with them once.
True.
Yeah, when things were good.
And one extra thing I wanted to point out is we did apply and receive the waiver this year to use some of our additional stockpile days for PD. So we had a calendar of 177 days this year, and this one is going to 175. So it would bring in 2 extra days that we could use for professional development if approved by you all and then at the state level. But just wanted to point that out for you,
Yeah.
because that's what.
And we leave that on our calendars. So I know some people call up and say, oh, it still says proposed. It is, even though the board approves it, it is really not official until the state approves that
In April.
Right.
And we build up enough time because we go the extra 30 minutes a day to where we have 13 stockpile days. So this is using 5, so we would still have 8 in case of weather, illness outbreak.
Okay. Has there been any reaction from teachers or parents regarding the loss of 2 instructional days?
There was-
2
there was
additional
some-
instructional.
there were some
I got an
comments
email.
about that,
Yeah.
But not the majority. I think the majority of teachers are really supportive, and parents of this calendar.
Yeah, I think everybody I've heard likes the fact it starts August the 12th. That's a
That's
very
the big thing.
popular
That's a
thing.
popular thing.
I just was curious about the,
And our reasoning to the state was for PD days.
Yes, correct.
okay.
And I think the other thing that we talked about on
Yeah.
Amy is we're always looking to be innovative and change what we're doing in the district, whether it's in our academic programming, whether it's in our calendar, whether it's in our professional development. And we look to provide surveys to our stakeholders and we make adjustments. And so if this is something that next year, as we are starting to develop this calendar, we feel like there are changes we need to make, we'll make those changes at that time.
Okay.
So
Have we heard any negative feedback on the proposed calendar? I know we
There's
did the
always,
email.
there's always some.
I mean, yeah.
We went through,
Anything that
we
was
actually spent a couple
a
of
bolus.
days going through
Yeah.
feedback, good and bad. I would say the majority was good.
Positive.
We are making the FAQ to go out to our staff and also to our parents, just so they can understand the sequence. I would say the ones that were concerned, that I heard of, something that we may need to address, either working with our REACH group, was on childcare. So we're talking about, we don't know the details. We want to look at PD. This is something I thought of, not PD, childcare for our employees. So since we have this change in calendar, that may be something as we go through the budget season to say at the beginning of the school year, do we want to honor our young parents and provide some childcare for them so they're working in their classrooms, maybe in schools, but we're looking at what's our ability to do that. I don't know if it's legal to do that. Maybe we can get a stipend or something, but we're going to look at how can we, once again, honor those employees. I think that's a concern that we saw throughout with some parents was the amount of time that their children are off and finding something to do with them.
Yeah, I did hear
that
that.
Thanksgiving week.
Thanksgiving week, yeah.
Yeah.
So that was.
Well,
something
it's
that-
starting later, too.
A lot of parents, but I would say it was really heavy on the, most of the parents really like starting late. There are some that have working parents and they're having to find something to do with their children.
So the process would be after we propose this to you and you all look at it and vote, then we are not able to submit it to the state for approval until April. So it will remain proposed until when we submit it to the state, and we also submit the waiver at the same time.
Okay.
My prediction, because this is a calendar that they've already approved in Carterville and Arlington, this is a very similar calendar that cannot predict it. They would vote against it.
You never
They might
know.
have a different reason, but you never know. But if they were consistent, my guess is they would approve this because they approved this for them.
All right, do we have anything else in the calendar?
Looks great.
Okay.
Good job.
Great job.
Thank you, Dr. Park. Let's move on. Next would be miscellaneous budget amendments, number 18 and 19. Hello, Mr. Jones.
First, you have, excuse me, budget amendment number 18. We've already received from the Tennessee Department of Education a reimbursement for IDA high cost. These costs were incurred in the 17-18 school year for certain special ed students.
And I will pause to say I would like to thank Ms. Huffman and Mr. Jones for getting us this money. This is something that, not something they just grant you. They've gone through an extensive process. I think every year that they've been here, they've been applying, trying to get these reimbursements. And so this is our first time that we've been able to get this reimbursement. So thank you all both for your work on getting us this money for the district. It's more money that we can use towards educating students.
And then you'll see that Ms. Huffman plans to use this for contracted services for speech, OT, and BCBA.
Any questions? You want to cover 19?
Number 19, in 17-18, when we closed out the fiscal year, there were funds that were unspent for the TV studio, and we received that PEG funding through the city of Germantown. And so since they are restricted dollars, we are reappropriating those funds for the 18-19 school year, and using reserves, but also because of a shortfall in revenue, we have actually cut the budget by $10,000. So we're seeing this revenue line item decrease over time.
So as you know, we get a, forget the exact amount, it's $1 and change off of everyone who has a cable bill in the city of Germantown, and that has to be used for capital improvements to a public access television studio. So that is the PEG funding that we receive. And so as if there are less people who are using cable.
Darn that Netflix, I tell you.
Maybe a bad trip.
And I believe the plans for the funds are to purchase or construct a mobile TV unit.
Okay, cool.
That'd be fun.
Excellent.
That's great.
Thank you, Mr. Jones. I'll try not to forget you tonight.
Increasing cable may be greater than our.
Okay, next is the MOU between the city and GMSD. Superintendent Manuel.
So as you know, this has been a project with multiple partners at the table. We had a very generous donor who was willing to give $1 million to the school district, $700,000 for athletics, $300,000 for fine arts, as long as the city, school district, and private donors also raise that same amount of funding. And so this just formalizes that agreement with the city, because we could have all the partners come together to agree to that. And I think it's something special. The design process is going on right now with the architect for the field house portion of this project. They should be done with that next month. At that point, we are also working on the auditorium design, and we have a team. So is serving on that committee. We actually went out and toured Collierville's facility out there and saw some of the things that we would love to have in our district.
It's a beautiful facility.
It is very beautiful. And so know that we are doing that process too, because it's a twofold project. Not only are they talking about building a field house, but the current band storage building, they're talking about turning into a pavilion where parents can have food and actually sit up there
nice.
at the football games. But that takes away storage space, practice space for the band, and we would want to add those onto a whole fine arts design for the new school. And I think the discussion that we had is, do we want to just design a Band-Aid at our current facility? Because if we're making changes to our fine arts programs, we want to do it the right way. And so we need to look at the practice spaces for band, practice spaces, storage spaces for the theater programs. What does our current theater look like? And maybe combine it all into one
Orchestra, too.
project.
Choir.
So know that we're just starting that
Orchestra,
process.
choir.
This is something that we're excited about, that the board will definitely play a role in as we move forward with it. Just designing right now for the next step.
Great. Awesome. Did you want to add anything, Ms. Hill?
No, I'm very excited about it. I feel like the field house, the designs we've seen so far are kind of breathe a little life into some things and reward our athletes who are so successful on equipment that is old.
Yes.
I will point out, I think they've been very mindful also to design the field house in a way that can be used by all athletics, including male and female
Yes.
athletics. So it's a wonderful addition for everybody. And then on the arts side, I think the team that is together is excited to really vision out what our fine arts could be. And And after you look at Collierville, you just want to kind of up the ante just a little bit. But it's exciting. And I look forward to giving you reports as things move forward.
Thank you. Ms. Parker?
I found it. Everything's good.
Anyone else? Comments, questions? Okay, then we'll move on to the next item on the agenda, Dogwood Elementary Playground Project. Good evening, Mr. Kathy.
Good evening. I'd like to say for the record that the operations department was very excited about the calendar, especially getting an extra week to get projects done. The proposal before you, this was done, Dogwood's administration, PTO president, even students. Ms. Price got letters from the second graders, and of course, they did all agree on one thing, which is more recess time, but through the feedback process, items that were identified in the proposal were obviously types of equipment. Shade was identified as a big priority, accessibility, and I think I hit type of equipment. This has been adjusted, tweaked, gone back through a few times, and the PTO Dogwood also did embark on a fundraiser to cover some of the costs for this. Obviously, they're not going to be able to cover all of the costs for this. We've already told them from the beginning that whatever the PTO raises is great. We will make up whatever the remainder is. The amount in front of you is the whole amount to do the entire project. I predict they'll come somewhere in the $30,000 to $40,000 range on their efforts, which is fine. It's something that needs to be, yes, incredible.
It's incredible.
We thank every dollar they can give to this.
The playground needs to be replaced, the old railroad ties need to go, the loose surfacing needs to go, the equipment is past its useful life, it needs to be done. So the proposal and the recommendation before you is to, and the location also is something that was a feedback item where we're moving it to the south of where the basketball court currently is. So away from the parking lot, a little bit further back onto the campus.
Good.
Perfect.
So that's the proposal before you, and the last piece of the proposal will actually be, once the new playground is in service, removal of the old playground and all of the surfacing. So, and that we did that. We got Cunningham and RJR Enterprises engaged pretty early in the process. They remember when our purchasing cooperatives U.S. Communities. So that's our item before you, and I'll be happy to answer any questions about it.
When are you going to start?
Assuming
it's
approval
approved.
tonight, it's all really dependent at that point about, they won't move forward, nobody will move forward without a board approval and a purchase order. So assuming approval tonight, we'll move a purchase order forward, and then it really boils down to lead time on equipment when they get crews scheduled. But the answer to your question is,
So by spring, it'll,
I would hope so, yes, that we'll move as soon as possible,
So-
assuming approval.
Couple of questions. Because we obviously will maintain it. So I think the shade is a great idea, but how wind resistant is the shade?
It's a great question. The setup that's there does scare me a little bit, in all honesty, because you have to really maintain and make sure that you batten down umbrella shade, because otherwise it becomes it catches and throws. So this is a great option, I think, to try and see how it works and make sure that we're taking down and securing. If it doesn't work, then we would have to look at sail shades or some alternative, but we think this is going to work, but we've never tried it before, so it'll be it'll be
A new endeavor, okay.
But typically, how long do you think this playground will last? Do we have like a?
The typical lifespan usually is 15 to 20 years.
Okay.
And again, that's all dependent on lots of different factors, weather, amount of use, type of equipment, all of the above, but 15 to 20 years is
15,
the general
20.
range.
Okay, and during construction, what would the impact be on students? Since you said we'll basically start once the purchase order, and they can get equipment and everything.
There will be some to the campus. Since we're not putting it exactly where the old playground was, it'll be minimal, because we will have to cordon off that area and make it a construction zone.
Right.
But as far as loss of playgrounds, no, they will still have access to both the city park
Okay.
area and the playground that's
Okay.
there. The very last piece of the project, once the new playground is open, is to remove the old one, so we're not losing a playground in the
Okay,
process.
so there'll be a time of trade-off. Got it.
Any other questions?
and where are the funds coming from specifically?
They'll come from our capital outlay budget, from the general fund.
Anything else?
We have a special needs playground at Dogwood already,
Yes.
correct? Okay. Just double check.
So this is on the other side of
The
it.
other side of
On the north side of the basketball courts.
All right, if there are no further questions, we'll move to the change order for Forest Hill Elementary.
Okay, this is the good one. This change order is for a flooring change. Originally, what we specified was from the manufacturer's Forbo, but they're the same manufacturer of the flooring products that was down at the new Riverdale edition. They have several different lines of products, and the item that we originally specified was a higher durability, had a higher toughness rating. Well, we got notification that they discontinued several of the colors in manufacturing that product that are pretty specific and important to the interior design of the building. So we went back to basically the exact same product that's at Riverdale, and in doing so, that's $150,583 credit to the project. So no problem with that. The flooring product at Riverdale, we've had great results with, but we did specify tougher, higher end flooring for the elementary school. But with them discontinuing as many colors, it would not have worked scheme wise. So, and after the next item, we kind of do what we have.
Yeah.
Yes.
Are there any
It's our recommendation
questions?
to accept it and move to that flooring product.
If there are no questions on this, we will move to the next one.
The next change order item is for one of the favorite things that we almost always encounter on projects, which is unsuitable soils. This has been several month-long process on this change order. And when we went through this, we knew we had unsuitable soils, and there are 5, 6 different parties that get involved when we have unsuitable soils. Of course, you got A2H, our architecture and engineering firm, they've been a party involved. Baldwin and Shell, the general contractor, they've also been involved. You've got PSI and Geotechnology. They're our soils testing and monitoring company, so they're out there taking soil samples and testing, which is very important. You don't want to put foundation on unsuitable soils or you got major problems. So we have them out there. They also verify quantities of soil that are being remediated and tested as unsuitable so that for lack of a better term, the subcontractor doesn't just run away and claim soil that they're not remediating.
Let me talk in non-operational speak. So when they test the soil and it's too soft to put the foundation on, they actually measure the density of the soil. And so what that means to remediate means they cut out a portion. It looks like they're taking out a swimming pool portion of that, and they're adding either concrete stabilizer, they're adding material to it to make the ground harder. And so that cost of cutting out the bad dirt and putting in a filler to it is the cost that we have for this project.
And we've gone back several months, the supporting documentation is attached, but everybody, all parties have agreed that yes, this is the proper quantity and this is the proper amount. So that's the change order that we're bringing to you in the amount of $282,300.
Why did it go from a 3-foot depth to a 2-foot?
Yeah, that was my question.
Well, money. In all honesty, going to 3.5 was going to escalate this cost significantly, more so than it was. But everybody agreed that the 2-foot depth was an acceptable depth to go to and maintain the integrity.
And we feel really good about that?
Yes, ma'am.
I know.
Yeah,
I'm thinking, do we want the Leaning Tower of Forest Hill? Not really.
No, we definitely
So-
don't want that, but
We've already built a leaning tower in Germantown. I can tell you where it sits.
the engineers, everyone involved signed off and said that was an acceptable depth, so.
And know too that when we bring these change orders, these are all covered under our budget. That's why we build in contingency to the project. These are just for the board's information of how the project is proceeding.
Right.
Okay, as long as y'all are comfortable with changing it, that seems like a big change.
The last one.
No, I mean,
three
the
to-
depth.
3 to 2 feet.
Yeah,
That was my
from
question.
3.5 to 2 feet seemed like a big change.
Very comfortable.
Okay. Any other questions, concerns?
Is a lot of it trees, the bio?
It's a mix. Some of it was soft soil, some of it was organic materials like that we got into once we dove in.
Just that continues to go down.
Okay, if there's nothing else, we'll move on to the next one. This one's exciting, the ADA assessment at
So
Dogwood.
This is the ADA assessment at Dogwood. It includes all items on the site, exterior of the building and the interior of the building that need to be completed in order to bring Dogwood up to current code. Items identified include door hardware, signage, curb cuts, sidewalks, slope, parking lots and parking spaces, accessibility, handrails, ramps, restrooms, and others. The main reason I wanted to go ahead and get this in front of the board, when we had our first facility analysis done by Fleming, I've tried to say it enough, but I need to say it again, that the number that they put in there was really a placeholder. It was a $600,000 placeholder. It wasn't based on any in-depth look at the actual needs or itemized costs. So when this came back, I had a feeling it would be more than it is. It's nearly double the $600,000 number, which affects our master facilities plan. So there's a few different options we can look at. We're going to have to get some legal clarification as well. We can look at just tackling the exterior and phasing this over the course of a year or two, and then tackling the interior. We can look at biting it off all at once. Well, the legal clarification we're going to have to get before we proceed in any direction is every time we've done ADA improvements, we've been told that we've got to go all the way. So once you begin, you've got to bring other items up to existing code.
Or will they let you do it over a couple of year time, or?
That's the legal clarification we're going to see.
Yeah.
So we're gonna look at, can we split outside versus inside, so there may be some differential. I know that we do have some savings, not much, but the playground project that we just discussed is also addressed in this plan, and it's a small number that they talk about
What?
addressing in the bathroom.
Yeah, what about the city sidewalks? Can the city
Right.
pay for that?
I had the same question, because that's city sidewalk, it's not us.
That is city sidewalk. We can engage them, and the rule in the city is your sidewalks are yours.
Yeah,
if
they
they're-
are.
If they're in front of your property, so.
You have a sidewalk?
That doesn't mean we can't ask and engage, but that
I
is
think we
the,
can engage.
I think we
Rule.
should at least engage.
The,
We can always ask.
Yeah.
looking at this report, I mean, I could talk bad about it, but I won't. This is, who did the report?
so you're talking about the assessment report, that was done by Self and Tucker architecture firm. They were the ones that we engaged to do the analysis.
Do you
Wow.
have to do everything they say? I mean,
This is for our purposes.
This is for us.
Yeah.
This is for us.
But I mean, you're talking about taking out halls,
Yeah,
hallways.
Absolutely. The ramps don't even come close to meeting slopes as you transition from hallway to hallway.
Yeah.
So you are talking, I mean, it's about $1.2 million of work inside and out to bring it up to ADA code.
and it can't
Now,
be done with the students. I mean, there's so
No,
much
it's
of it that
gotta be done.
can't be done.
Got to be done during the summer. That's the
Yeah,
only way you
and
can
there's
do
no way
it.
to get
And
all
this
that
is-
done.
This is one of those tough decision points that we talked about for the board,
Yeah.
because we are grandfathered in. We don't have to make these changes.
But as we,
but you need to.
but as we do the bathrooms, we can certainly bring them up to
Yes.
ADA.
Yes.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So that's
I
the
wanted
other
to-
But can we do the bathrooms and then not legally say you are now required to continue? Because
That's
that I
what the
think is
decision we
the
have to
sticky
have.
part is,
That's the
what is our legal?
That's the clarification we'll seek out and plan to bring to the next board meeting. I think that is absolutely a board discussion that you guys need to have on priority in this report. It's been on our deferred maintenance list for 3 or 4 years, and we keep moving it down the plan each year. But it doesn't have to be tackled all at once. It can be tackled all at once. I do think that's a board discussion and decision point, and my goal is to have that information at the next board meeting so the board can say, okay, we can bite it off in chunks, or no, we either have to do all or none, so we choose all or we choose none.
But I think we do need to be mindful that,
Oh, definitely,
Yes.
definitely.
This is what we need to do. It's the
It needs
time.
to
Yeah.
be right thing. How, when do we do it?
And we know the bathrooms have just,
Oh, gosh.
But then after this one, then we have Farmington, and then we have
Riverdale.
Riverdale. and-
Those are
Exactly.
gonna be where the big ones are. Houston Middle and Houston High School has some items, but they won't have near the items that those
Right, the newer
campuses that you
buildings.
just mentioned do.
Yeah.
Because we have it on the master plan, so.
Yeah.
You can see they were.
Wow.
they were very
Extensive.
thorough.
They were
Wow.
very thorough.
I mean,
They
we
were
have a
very thorough. Oh, boy. Okay, any other questions on this?
Y'all, good luck with that.
Thanks a lot.
I guess because it's grandfathered in, just in private sector, if you improve your facility in any way to a certain dollar amount, then you have to bring it to ADA compliant, period. But you don't fall under that. Your school doesn't.
That's what we have to get a
That's
legal.
what we
Legal
We gotta
opinion.
get a legal opinion on.
Okay.
And if like updating a bathroom would fall under, that's what I'm worried about.
It's
Yeah.
I'm
usually
really
a
kind of
dollar
worried
amount.
about that,
It's
yeah.
usually if you spend a certain
Still,
amount of dollars on it.
those bathrooms
then
are
you
so
have to bring
bad.
it to
They are.
ADA.
That would be my first, but can we do the bathrooms without doing the hallways?
It's called
That's-
Without doing
politics.
I mean, it's just this,
outside. Okay, is there anything else on the ADA assessment? Then let's move on to, because I'm mindful of the time, the master facilities plan update.
Okay,
Thank you, Ms. Subramani, for giving us all a hard copy. And Ms. Oak particularly appreciates the orange.
I love the colors. It's beautiful. And I know Ms. Parker loves it too.
No, I don't.
I can only bug
Those
you a
were the
little bit longer
folders
about
on sale
that.
at Office Depot.
We appreciate,
Nobody was buying orange.
Nobody wants his color.
nobody wants this color for a reason.
These were 90% off.
After our football season, after our football season, I don't blame them actually, so.
Yeah, that's right, free to a good home.
Mr. Kathy?
yes, ma'am, and I'm not gonna go through the whole plan word for word. On page 2, those are the folks that deserve to be thanked, because the document is really a team effort from a whole lot of different people, that put a whole lot of different input into the plan. And we did have some additions to the committee this year, from the city. Reynold Douglas and Jason Heisman, the assistant city administrator, were added to the committee. They asked to be added. We thought it was good practice to add them, because at the end of the day, that's our funding body that we're going to have to engage as we go through this process. So they sat there and were a part of this process. I would like to, if you would turn to, and I'll answer any questions that you have, but I'm just gonna hit on some of the areas on page, if you would hit page 5. We went back, and this was a team effort with Mr. Jones and going back through finance, but we went back and just kind of took a holistic view of what have we spent to date and where did that money come from. So on page 5, you can see that since the district's inception, and this is in the first paragraph, we've invested $55 million in capital improvement projects. Now, how that breaks out is the city of Germantown has invested $35 million, and we'll get into which projects and what later in the plan. The Germantown Municipal School District has invested $17 million from the general fund, and then Shelby County Commission has invested $3 million, and that makes up our investment to date in capital improvement, deferred maintenance, and all of the improvements to the facilities that we've done. So that was a key highlight, something that's changed about the plan. If you would turn to page 8. These tables have been updated. These are really important, good historical planning, and these are really student services tables where when you look at what our historical resident enrollment has been, as well as what our historical non-resident enrollment has been. And you can kind of see by looking at these tables that as our resident enrollment has gone up, our transfers have gone down, and that's been kind of the strategy to bring it into play. And it's always interesting, too, to follow the diagonals. Mr. Manuel does that frequently because that's your cohort. You're watching a class move up if you follow them diagonally and seeing how growth is happening within the cohorts. Is it dropping? Is it staying stagnant? Is it increasing? For the most part, it's increasing. But those are important historical tables to look at as far as how we've grown, how we've reduced transfers since 2014 to present. The next table that I wanted to bring your attention to is table 3, which is on page 9. And that again goes to enrollment growth, and you can kind of see how we've broken out and how it has grown. since we've become a district. We've grown 308 students at the elementary levels, 269 in middle school, and 374 residents at high school, for a grand total of 951 students of growth since we've become a district. And it's noteworthy that on that growth, we look at year to year as well. And the next table is on page 10, which is next page over. This gives you a look at breakdown by school. So where did we grow? And to look at it by school, we actually had we looked at it, and we actually had a resident increase of 45 students at Dogwood. We actually decreased 22 residents at Farmington from last year to this year. Increase of 70 students at Riverdale Elementary. Increase of 90 resident students at Riverdale Middle, and 28 at Houston Middle School. So those were our jumps, but then you can see that broken out by school here, where you can see that, yes, we are growing. It's a common trend. Our first 5 years, we've shown pretty steady growth. Okay, if I could bring your attention to page 14. Oh, I'm sorry, no, page 11, my mistake. Special education enrollment, and I wanted to hit this page as well as the next one. Mr. Manuel hit this point earlier this evening, but I'd like to re-emphasize it. Our special education enrollment, preschool, and our self-contained classrooms, they affect capacity. Capacity is not a static number, because while the number of brick and mortar classrooms don't change each year, their utilization does. So if you have a special education program, capacity moves. And the same with instructional programs. If you add RTI and say there's a classroom needed there, or if you add a strings program and say there's a classroom needed there, it affects capacity. So capacity is not a static number.
And I thought it'd be helpful to have Ms. Huffman just come up and talk. I know we talked about the preschool population and what we're seeing with our preschool numbers. Talk briefly about how to get to preschool, and then how do we know when preschoolers are coming?
The way we know.
Turn on your mic.
I've never been a citizen to be heard, so I don't know how to use the mic. The way we know how many preschool numbers we're going to get every year is really, we don't know. Other than TEIS, we do get a 3-month update. Okay, who do we know is moving into your district that we're currently serving and that you're going to need to evaluate before their 3rd birthday. But outside of those numbers are just people that move in from all over the world, including Singapore. So, students that, in fact, we got triplets last week who are all going to be students that we're serving. So, it is a ever-changing number. So it's not just in August, it's all year long. We try to hold out, how many do we think based on the last 5 years are going to move in this year? But that number is really hard to pinpoint.
But know that we have seen a substantial increase
Yes.
in our preschool numbers. We see them coming, and it's a good thing. It's justification of the fact, validation of the fact that we have a great program, and we are doing students and serving our students. And if you have a special needs, it's a great place to be. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Huffman.
On page 13 now, which is the demographer's report. That's really what page 12 and 13 cover. We did hire a demographer back in the spring of 2017 to project out enrollment. The chart that's on page 13 includes residents and non-residents alike in the overall numbers. And so far, what his predictions look like this year as opposed to how we actually shook out. The prediction at elementary or K through 5 was 2,694. Currently, we're at 2,638. So we're 56 students lower this year than predicted by the demographer in K through 5. For middle school or 6 through 8, demographer predicted 1,443. Currently, we're at 1,453. So we're 10 above where the demographer predicted. And then on high school, which is not a big concern because of the transfer population that we can control, demographer predicted 1,890. Currently, we're at 1,873, so 17 lower than the demographer's prediction. The The real, I think, where the rubber hits the road with the demographer's predictions, so far, that's pretty close, the numbers that are there.
Remarkably
Now,
so.
he predicts that eventually we are gonna hit a plateau and we're gonna start to do this instead of the straight upwards arrow that we've had, from what we've had so far. So, it's an educated guess based on data. Could it be wrong? Sure, it could be wrong. It's not an exact science. But so far, the demographer has been pretty close as far as numbers and predictions. So hopefully that continues. I think my household will be an example of that. I have an elementary school children now. We hope to stay in that home and be happy there for a long time. So as my children age up, there won't be an elementary school family circling through to my home. So those numbers will stay the same. So so far, pretty accurate, and we'll continue to monitor and look at it as we continue. On page 14 are the capacity numbers, and we touched on how that has changed a little bit. Again, capacity numbers aren't static, and when we've gone back and looked at historical, but Farmington's capacity has been 730 one year, 750 another year, 780 another year. Currently it's down to 700. Again, that's due to increased utilization of classrooms. Dogwood, the same, historically has been 835, 810, 815, now it's 790. And Riverdale Elementary School is at 735, 730 early. Then when we built the middle school addition, some of those classrooms went out to the middle school, which opened up the capacity and moved it up a little bit. So currently right now, Riverdale's elementary, but we look at that every year. They're at 800 now, but we look at it every year. We look at the capacity, we look at how the classrooms are being utilized, and then we do our calculations of K through 3 or 4 through 5, and that's how we arrive at our capacity numbers. But again, they're not static numbers. The next ones that we were going to take a look at, all of our programs were updated, and all of our cabinet members had their touch on updating the programs that are on pages 15, 16, and 17. So I won't dive through all of those, but those were all updated. Something that is new to the plan that we have not done in the past that I did want to point out, if you will go to page 21. And that really gives a picture of the real investments that have been made and projects that have been completed at Houston High School, as well as the funding source and how the dollars break out. So if anybody ever, there's a lot of numbers that get thrown around about our facility improvements and who did what and what's been done and who's paid for what and all of those things. This is a real breakdown of who's paid for what and what projects have been done at each one of our facilities. So you can see at Houston High School, for example, we're close to $5 million invested there. And you can see at the top some of the projects we've done: television studio, HVAC, roof replacements, painting this past summer, other minor upgrades like library carpeting, turf field, jumbotron. And then you can see in the pie chart, at Houston High School, we're the lion's share of the investment. We're just a little over $2.5 million. And then you can see the other funding sources broken out accordingly.
And this should look familiar. I think you've seen this presentation a couple times.
Yes, we have.
Yes.
Also, all of the site plans were updated, so you can see our new roof. There's evidence that it was actually performed on page 22, and all the site plans were updated accordingly. Page 25, you see Houston Middle, and again, one of our newer facilities, but the main projects we've done there are repaving, gym floor replacement, and then you got minor upgrades, library carpeting, water bottle filling stations, where GMSD makes up the lion's share of that funding. And Riverdale on page 28, we'll get to future projects later, but again, the major project that really has been done there is the addition. And so that and how the funding breaks out, where the city funded $7 million, Germantown Municipal School District funded just a little over $5 million for that addition at Riverdale.
We need to move quick because you guys are out.
Yes, sir. I will start zipping. So I'm going to skip ahead since I need to start zipping. Please go down to page 38. This is new to the plan, obviously, from last year where we're constructing Forest Hill Elementary School. This is a $30 million project, and I like to be clear on that when people ask how much the project is really going to cost, because that's really what it's going to cost at the end of the day. The city funded 27 million of that, and how it breaks out, the bid was 23.1 million for construction. We spent $3.1 million to purchase the land, so you're up to 26.2. Architect and engineering fees are 6% of the project, so you're looking at about 1.4 million there. So you've peaked up over the 27 million already, and we haven't bought a piece of FF&E for the building yet. So that's the real cost of the elementary school as we move forward with the project. And then also there, you've got the breakout on the pie chart for our administrative building. That's city took out capital outlay notes over a 12-year period. GMSD is paying the city back for those outlay notes. So as we plan future budgets, we have to include that amount that we'll be paying back for the capital outlay notes for the Riverdale bond, and put those in our capital budget so we make those payments each year. So it'll affect our budgeting process as we move forward. I think I'm just going to head straight to the end since I'm running out of time. If you'll read page 48.
And here's, I do want to preface this with the fact that I don't think this is something I want me to say that this is set in stone. This is a planning document for us. This is something that we change and look at. We have talked about with the city, part of the Parks Master Plan was for the city to give us the land behind Houston High School. I think as we are embarking on this project where we are looking at what can the fine arts be, what can the auditorium be, we want to do that with all of our stakeholders, all of our programs, whether it's our science labs at the high school, whether it's our health science programs, whether it's our other CT courses that we have at school. We need to have a team sit down and look at what could that land be, how could we completely utilize that property. And so I don't want people to think that we are not taking those things into consideration. I know that as we go through that process and really design what can be at that school, that this is going to change how we prioritize these things and move these things. So no, this is not an end-all plan for us. It's just where we are at this moment. So with that, Mr. Head.
The big additions, and this was added, and this again is something new to the plan. I know we're on page 48, but on page 45 and 46, there are some new projects there as well as some current and future funding needs. I won't go over them all in detail, but key additions that we talked about, bathroom upgrades and renovations. So that's one that's added to the plan. Board has already allocated dollars. Work has already begun. We're working towards those things. The Riverdale boiler chiller renovation project. You guys are all familiar with Riverdale and the project there and the needs. So I won't belabor that and go back into it. Softball field is something that has been on our radar for quite some time, and we know is a need. Mr. Manuel just touched on the negotiations for Houston Levy Park. Not just for a softball field, but if you drive back through there during the day, kids are parking all through there because we have a parking shortage at Houston High School. So it would be a great addition to add that land, and it would help. We hear quite frequently we really just need to do an overall master plan, look at Houston High School space, and we're in. That land would drastically change that master plan, and so Mr. Manuel continues those negotiations with the city. And the auditorium renovation and band addition, we touched on that committee earlier, and then the ADA analysis we touched on. So the recommended projects on page 48, some of them already are underway. The new elementary school is underway. The central office space is also underway. The Riverdale boiler chiller renovation project, the city has agreed to allocate $2.5 million towards that project. We think it will be more than that when we go to bid. But they have allocated $2.5 million, and that will really catch Riverdale up on a lot of their deferred maintenance items, because you've got a whole scope of work in addition to rooftop units, new ductwork. You've got ceiling tile grid that will be all demoed out, new ductwork placed in, all new ceiling tile grid, LED lights, windows if the budget allows, so that Riverdale's older buildings, which we really haven't done much to, will go from not having much done to a whole renovation, in addition to getting off a system that's not best for the school. So that project is in the plan. The field house is also in the plan. Mr. Manuel hit that earlier. The security upgrades at all schools and the HHS entrance The security upgrades, and Mr. Blaine and Mr. Pierce did a lot of that work. A lot of those dollars have already been spent and done, quite frankly, on camera upgrades, cell phone boosters. What's left, we're going to use to do the Houston High School, the fencing between the main building and the A building, the courtyard, and the new entrance that goes directly into the office for a more secure entryway into the school. But that will eat up that $500,000 and probably then some a little bit. So we put it in the next fiscal year's budget to look at security entrances at Houston Middle and Dogwood as well, to keep moving down that line to keep our schools safer. The Dogwood painting, this one has been on the deferred maintenance list for a while, and Dogwood is in need of painting. And the bathroom upgrades and renovations, the board has already allocated, and then the playground replacement, which we already spoke about earlier this evening, for this year's projects. And Mr. Manuel hit this earlier, but again, we know this is not everything that needs to be done, nor is this a static document. It really is something that we need to keep revisiting, coming back to, and continuing with. So I'll be quiet and answer any questions.
Do y'all have any questions?
Great job, Josh.
It is.
This is a lot to take on.
It's a lot to
The
absorb.
team did a great job.
Everybody-
It was a great job.
Everybody had hands-on and contributed.
It is a lot, and it's a nice document. I love all the addition of, you've added several new charts to this that are helpful. Anything? No? Well, thank you, and thank you to the whole team. Thank you, Ms. Parker, for representing us on that. And I'm sorry I rushed you.
There's a lot to talk about with that.
Yeah, there is, but we had a lot to talk about tonight. But I wanted to leave us a few minutes on the next agenda item with the Board General Counsel. We had set October the 29th is the date that we would discuss this. Over the weekend, I did send you all, hopefully you had a chance to review everything. I did meet with 3 separate attorneys. I've identified all of them on the notes that I sent you. They were all asked the same 5 questions that were crafted with the help of Randall Bennett at TSBA, who is their general counsel. With one set, Mr. Manuel attended at the attorney's request. Mr. Manuel attended the interview as well. And just to let you know, on that particular interview, the answers to the first 2 questions, and that was Birch Porter Johnson, the answer to the first 2 questions in the face-to-face interview were not very sufficient for me to write up. So in talking to who would be their lead, would be Eric Plumley, he did submit in writing the answers that you see. Because it's very hard for you to compare, in all fairness, 3 sets of attorneys with very little information. So with that, I don't know if you have some questions about the face-to-face. I tried to include everybody's bios. I did bring my notes in case you had any individual questions on how I found everybody on a personal level.
Do you have a recommendation?
I have a personal recommendation, yes. I think 2 of the attorneys clearly have the preponderance of experience in school law, and they're very well known. I felt from the interviews how quick the answers came, the definitiveness of the answers. That's kind of how I shaped my thing. I would personally recommend Cheryl Estes with Lewis Thompson. While she has a wealth of education experience and litigation experience with school districts, she's never been a general counsel. The advantage to there's advantage to everybody, but just so you know, one of the attorneys at Lewis Thomason is Chuck Hagel, who is considered one of the preeminent school attorneys in the state of Tennessee. Look at all the heads nodding. And he is. I mean, he has his supporters and his detractors, I know, but he is considered the go-to person for school law. So with that, that would be my recommendation, would be Ms. Estes.
So she has not been general counsel before. That's-
She's done everything else, but she's
Everything
not
but.
specifically been a general counsel. She's done all the contract, well, you saw
I
what
read-
she's
Yeah, I
done.
read it, I was just,
That would be it. And actually, Mr. Shields has been an attorney to 5 districts, but I don't know that he's been general counsel. That's kind of a different, and we're kind of trailblazing with this because we will have a separate attorney from the district, which we had all kind of talked about, but we'll have a separate attorney from the district. So we'll be mapping out how that is going to work as we go along when it comes to contracts that the board will need to sign and view.
how does policy address separate attorneys for district and board?
The board
Or does that
chooses
say-
its own attorney.
So the board chooses the attorney for the board, but not for the
board.
district?
District can use them if they want,
Yeah.
or they can use
Or
anything
they can
else.
use, they can, and it's quite common, as I found out in talking to all these individuals, that you use different firms or different attorneys for different cases, particularly when you're dealing with special
If
needs.
their strengths are certain areas?
There, yes, I mean, to the person, everybody said that Valerie Speakman was the person to go to for special needs cases and litigation. So, I mean, everybody was, they've all worked together. I mean, this is not a very large community. I mean, they're all pretty tight. So that, do y'all have any specific questions?
No, I appreciate you taking the time and providing us a detailed response.
It was an enjoyable experience. I learned a lot. And I thank TSBA for so generously working with us to get the questions down so that you would actually have something concrete to look at and consider. If you have no questions, we will adjourn the work session for the Board of Education, and you have 2.5 minutes.
Great.